Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my blog, where it's my mission and simultaneous pleasure to highlight my creative journey so that way I may inspire you, give you specific takeaways to help along in your creative pursuits. Now, before I get into things, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already done so. That way you get all the various episodes and lessons that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So first off, before I get into my journey, I would like to shout out a couple of my friends. So my friends Danielle, Courtney, Morgan, and a few others, they premiered a web series this Sunday called Tabitha TV. Episode 1 is live now, and they're going to put out a new one each week. And if you like workplace humor alongside with unrequited love stories, I think this is going to be really for you. It's worth checking out. Like I said, it's only 2 minutes, so if you like it, you like it. If you don't, well, no harm done type of thing, right? So I've linked to it down in the description, so that way you can get to it. So it would mean a lot to me, as well as certainly my friends, if you checked it out, because as always, as artists, we work so hard on these things, and when we finally put it out into the world, we want to have it be recognized, and so I hope you do that. But now shifting gears to my stuff, basically, a lot of the stuff that happened last week really falls into one of the 3 categories. The poster / the pitch deck, the script, and the visual effects. So this is all in connection to my second feature film, which I am packaging right now to try to get the funding for. So as part of that, I'm creating a proof of concept. That's a 3-minute film representing what the ultimate movie would be. And so we're in the VFX phase of that. The other thing being that I'm working on, this, like basically a presentation, right? Like to dumb it down, a PowerPoint style presentation of, what the creative thing is, who the characters are, the budgeting, things like that nature. And then of course the script needs to be polished up. So, I'm working on all of these in parallel to try to get them complete at the same time. So that way, sometime in March, I can then start emailing and talking with various people to try to get this made, to get the funding for it. And of course, like all things, some things go well, and then some things aren't going so well, and things of that nature. And so, let's say the script might be going well, but then some visual effects stuff is not going so well. And then another week it might be the reverse, right? So it's nothing is ever going to be a smooth ride in that sense. And that applies for not only all creative things, but it applies for life in general, right? It's just there's good things and there's bad things, and you have to kind of deal with them both equally. So as far as for a large part of last week, I was really focused on, as far as the pitch deck, I knew that I needed to get the poster done first. So the poster being the cover page of the pitch deck, because that's the first thing that people would see. It really is like any other sort of movie poster. You're really designing it, and it sets the tone for everything else, color scheme wise, font wise, yada, yada, yada. So there's no point in working on the interior pages if we don't know the look and feel of the cover page. So a big portion of my week was talking with various artists to try to get to, for them to see my vision, for us to talk about it, and where we can kind of land on it, and so forth. And for the most part, it's one of those things, like at the end of the day too, you can have this version, but then of course how people interpret it is different, right? Like you could say, like, I want it to be blue, but is it pastel blue? Is it light blue? Is it dark blue? all these different things, right? That becomes open for interpretation. So, that's the stuff that you kind of have to continue on. So, part of it is I don't necessarily like, it's one of those things I don't necessarily know. Should it be a light blue or should it be a dark blue type of thing? I'm not saying that's literally the conversations we're having, but on the surface of it, right? I don't know. And so it is an exploration. And at times, because I don't know it, it can be, excuse me, frustrating on my end simply because I can't answer that question. So I need to really think about it and consider what it's going to be. So I spent a lot of time kind of thinking about that. What is the right combination to bring this to light? And so there's a lot of playing. On the plus side, the content of the deck, I worked with Emily, who I've known. She's my book editor, and I've kind of brought her into the film world by helping me at certain points as far as the revision process of the script, and now as far as this. I know she might not know the technicalities of what should go into a pitch deck for a film, but at the end of the day, she knows story, and so conveying character bios, writing the synopsis, the log line, things like that, I knew that she would be really great. So I brought her on board, and we really honed in on what the deck should be, and I think we got it to a really, really good place. And it was one of those things too. I was very hesitant to reach out to other people in general until I had a more polished version. But I kind of, put that aside, and I was like, you know what? I have so many friends that are willing to help me. So right now, what I have is a dumpster fire of just garbage. Um, of in terms of the deck that I made and the content. So I said, listen, don't judge it visually, just literally read the words and the flow of it. And how is it to you, and let's talk. And so people were kind enough to really look at it and give me some really good feedback, which then also helped Emily and I in terms of how we did certain things. So like, for example, not having bullet points as far as bios, right? So I initially wrote character bios for my two main characters, the protagonist and the antagonist, and I also kind of bulleted key events in their life. It was like that, it was a kind of a clever way, but it's not really meant to be that way. And by not having them, I could actually compress certain things. So formatting wise, that was a big thing that helped me out. And then Emily and I could go to work on that and revise it as necessary, right? So that was the really good part. And so I feel great because in the text of the pitch deck is complete, as well as the synopsis. We have a really strong 500-word synopsis that we I drafted, and then Emily really polished up and so forth. And when I initially wrote it, it was about 600 or something words, and so we cut out a good 100 and really made it strong. So yeah, it feels good to have that complete, right? And then luckily with the poster, because I was kind of getting frustrated, I was kind of seeing, just asking other friends of mine of like their interpretation of what they would think this should look like and so forth. And then I was lucky enough to have a few options rendered. But the thing of it is that at that point, when I had a couple, so I have about 9 different posters really rendered. And what I did was I asked a couple of my friends, in fact, a good chunk of my friends, to be like, hey, here's 1 through 9. Which one do you like most? Which one do you not like? And at the same time, if there's elements of one that you like and would like to see in another, like, let me know that too. And bless all my friends. I really appreciate that they're always willing to give me feedback. But I have to put this into an actual spreadsheet. But for the most part, just observing the emails that are coming in, there is no consensus. It's like evenly down the line, everyone likes every single one, right? So there's no common thread of who likes what, which is not great, because you would at least like to see a little bit of delta on one or two, but that is not happening. And so I'm reminded of Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, if you're unfamiliar, it's the HBO TV series, and it's about a startup named Pied Piper. Really funny show. But there's a moment in there where they're debating on what to name the company. And it has to be something really spectacular. And so one of the characters, he basically says that the only way to do this properly is to just get high on drugs and be in the desert and like let the name come to you. And of course, it goes wrong for him in that sense because that's Silicon Valley and it's comedy. But I'm joking with my friends now of like I might have to just do a Silicon Valley version of this where I just get really insanely like just drugged out and figure out what this damn poster needs to be. And of course, I won't. I'm just joking about it. But that's part of how I deal with moments that are frustrating. And when I say frustrating, obviously, like in the grand scheme of things, this is nothing. But nonetheless, decisions have to be made and so forth. And so I like to just go to humor because if I can humor myself, then I can be a little bit more clear-headed and have more energy and positivity towards the thing that I have to tackle that has been frustrating, right? So that's kind of how I'm approaching that. As far as the script, so I've kind of made mention of this in the past few episodes. John Comfer, who is an amazing script doctor, he's been helping me out with this, and now we really we broke the script down into 4 parts. So Act 1, Act 2, Part 1, Act 2, Part 2, and then the third act. And we've gone through Act 1 and Part 1 of Act 2, and I've really done my touches on it. Now he's really taking it and kind of doing a full polish on it. And he sent me the first 10 pages yesterday, and he was like, "Hey, I just want to make sure I'm not taking it too far," things like that. And I'm like, "This is brilliant." I said, "No, you just keep going. I love to see what you end up with." So that's where that is at, and really exciting to kind of see that in play. The biggest thing of it, though, is the visual effects, right? This is, I don't want to call it the hardest. I don't know. All these things really kind of, to a degree, are out of my control, meaning implementing it. I'm managing it, but I'm not the maker. I'm the manager. And so, as far as the visual effects, the first half kind of came in on Wednesday of like all the samples, and then the second half of the 3-minute piece came in on I think Friday. And it was one of those things I didn't want. I knew like I wouldn't have time to really give notes that night, and I knew it was it's one of those things. I know it's like a dumb idea to like even just take a peek because then it'll just kind of sit with you. And so what ended up happening was, even though on Friday night the shots came in, and I knew I didn't have really time to sit with it and whatnot, and really give it the peace of mind and just true intention. Nonetheless, I took a peek at it, and initially I wasn't in love with certain moments, and then that just kind of obviously derailed me for the rest of the night because I was kind of thinking about that and couldn't sleep. Thought about it in the morning, and I was like, okay, let me just rather than think about all this stuff, let me really just kind of sit with it. Let me work on it. Let me put in the intention and really work towards how to make this work. And the good news is, at the end of the day, like my reaction to it wasn't as dire It's not like everything was incorrect. And like all things, it's no different than when people see a draft of something that I wrote. It's like this was just a draft, and that doesn't mean we're not claiming this is the final thing. And so of course it's going to get better. So the question is, how do we get it to be better, right? What are the levers that we pull to do that? So then sitting with it, and what I did was I took all the shots and I I put them on top in Premiere of the shots that I already had edited, so that way I can line things up and see it cut by cut and so forth. And yeah, so that then allowed me to really sit with it, and I examined each shot. I would go through it and make my various notes. And the good news is we're far along. What we have is great, but now it's about enhancing, right? So and I think really what my reaction to it was this idea that by it not being complete and me being in love with it in that moment, it meant that it was going to take more time and it was also going to take more money. But it's one of those things. I always knew in my heart of hearts that it would take more time and more money ultimately to get it across the finish line. So it's like, I don't know why, who was I fooling? Like, that was always within me. I knew that. And kind of in filmmaking in general, you always budget for contingencies, meaning like, okay, here's the budget, but then what's our contingency? And usually it's like 20%. So, 20%, if all of a sudden, things start getting costly and so forth, you have that padding of 20% to be able to afford when you go over on certain things, right? And you like not to, but most times you have to. And so in this scenario, I have to go over budget. And in my heart of hearts, I knew that it was going to kind of be this way. Now, as far as budgeting, this is one of those things that there's no real budget. It's kind of like just kind of get it done. And yeah, I think that's, it's one of those things when I sort of look at it, and I, the next morning when I woke up, I walked my dog and, really thought about this. And it was one of those things like, listen, in for a penny, in for a pound. At this point, not spending the money is not going to deliver the product we want. And, who's that ultimately benefit? It doesn't benefit me. It doesn't benefit the actors. It doesn't get me the funding that I need. So, we're in, right? The only way, there's no turning back, right? The only way forward is, the only way to the end is to go forward, right? And, so that's what I have to do. And I'm willing to make that because, again, number one, if nothing ever comes of this beyond just this proof of concept, well, then at least in that sense, it'll be the best 3 minutes. It's not a standalone short film necessarily, but at least, it would work, right? And someone can watch it and be like, okay, cool. This looks really good. The acting's great. The music, the editing, the visual effects, the sound design, the cinematography, like they can see it and be like, okay, I get what they were going for. It looks great, right? If nothing else, fine. The other thing of it is, at the end of the day, one of the reasons why I did this specifically was because I've never really worked with visual effects. And so this was my foray to teach myself visual effects. And so if I don't get to make the movie ultimately, at least I'll have gotten more comfortable with visual effects. And so in that sense, I always, rather than like pay for a class where you're just kind of learning by watching something or listening to somebody and so forth, this was really, okay, let's learn by doing. And so this is kind of that, I'm learning how to work with visual effects, work with visual effects artists and the process and so forth. So to me, even at the literal cost of all of this, it is worth it because it's a skill set now that I'm gaining for future stuff, right? And so that to me is valuable, and that is how I can justify it. And as I said, of course, if nothing else comes of this, just having a good final 3-minute product is also worth it. So that's the way I look at all of this. And once you really break it down, it's not a lot of work to get us to the final place. Luckily, I have a friend named Jonathan Moulton who's a producer on all of this, and he's been advising me along the way. And we got together on a Zoom with everybody, and we laid out a game plan of like, okay, who's going to tackle this, and we're going to check in on X, Y, and Z, and let's do this first, and then we'll worry about this, and creatively, here's how we can tackle this. So really being specific about it, and getting on the same page based off of what we have. And I think part of why that meeting was so productive is because it's interesting to me how a lot of people just refuse to give good notes, and they think part of it is they don't have time. But the thing of it is, if you don't give good notes and you don't spend the time writing out notes for somebody else, it's ultimately going to cost you more in the long run in terms of time and cost. And so, as I told you, I went through everything and I went shot by shot. I labeled everything. And I was like, okay, for this shot, X, Y, and Z, I'd like to see this. Blah, 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 blah. And not only was I specific and detailed, I also brought in, pictures, or I found YouTube videos that reference what I was kind of, aiming towards a little bit more. So it gives them very specific things to look for, and it acts as a checklist more so than just a base guideline. And I'm a bigger fan of having a checklist versus a guideline. It's like, we need to enhance the visual effects. It's like, okay, what the hell does that mean, right? Remember I told you about like blue, right? You could write blue, but is it light blue? Is it dark blue, right? So when you give someone even more freedom for interpretation, it's not going to yield good results. So, I'm excited in that sense, moving forward. And I don't know, in some, one of the things that really keeps me going in all of this, obviously I want to make this movie, and I think I can make this. I think someone is going to want to fund this, and I think ultimately audiences will want to see this. But right now, the thing that keeps me going is just the hard work of the actors, and how much fun we had the day that we made this, and I want them to have something that they can be proud of and put in their reels and so forth, and showcase and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, and also share it with you. Once we get it done, then we'll definitely share it and keep you updated when that exactly is. There's no definitive deadline that we're looking for. My aim is early March, maybe mid-March, but we'll see. It might be end of March, might be early April. I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see. As long as people are working, they're working hard, that's all I can ask for, and that's all I ask of myself too. All right. So creatively, that's kind of everything that kind of has been going on, certainly as far as the film is concerned. There's other stuff here and there, but stuff that I'm not at liberty to talk about, or I don't feel is important to talk about right now. What I do want to talk about real quick, though, before I wrap things up, is Clubhouse. Now, I did a video about Clubhouse, what it is and how to approach it, but really quickly, I just want to say, like, if you love movies, and talking about movies more specifically, my friend Anthony Becerra and I, every Thursday night at 8 p.m., we're gonna get together and we're gonna pick a movie to discuss, and we want other people to join us, and it's fun. Last week we did Framing Britney Spears, the Hulu New York Times bestselling New York Times documentary, and we had a great discussion with great people this Thursday, 8 p.m. And when I say 8 p.m., I mean Pacific time. So it's going to be a little bit late East Coast time, unfortunately. But nonetheless, we hope that you'll join us. We're going to be, this Thursday specifically, we're going to be discussing Judah and the Black Messiah. And then we'll kind of make the announcement each week after that. And I'll be posting about it on social media. So, if you love film and talking about them, it would be a fun way to converse with you and get to know you as well. Anyway, that's kind of what I have at the moment, like I said, in terms of what I think is worth sharing. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this is a benefit to you. By all means, please ask any questions you may have, whether down in the comments section or hit me up on social media at Svitek. Likewise, feel free to share this with somebody who you think might enjoy listening to it. I certainly would appreciate it. I appreciate you. I'll see you next time.